Today on Toy Habits Reviews, we are taking a detailed look at the evil master of escape, New Eternia Masterverse Webstor. And before we dive into the review, smash that like button, turn on notifications, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss a beat. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Toy Habits, and today we are taking a detailed look at the Masterverse New Eternia Webstor and comparing him to his MOTU Classics version, so let's dive right in. Alright, and here we have New Eternia Webstor in package, and he looks fantastic. He comes in the Masters of the Universe Masterverse New Eternia packaging, and we love that this is a New Eternia figure because we definitely needed a new take on Webstor. Now, you might say like, okay, this looks like the MOTU Classics Webstor, but there are a few key differences that we'll get into. You can also see the art on the side of the box, and you can see Webstor and his grappling gun, and previous Webstors have had the grappling hook attached to his backpack, so I really love this rendition and illustration that they're putting here. And then we have an amazing image of Webstor on the back of the box, and kudos to Roy Juarez and the MOTU team for just knocking all of these illustrations out of the park. And you can also see the cross-sell of the other figures that come in this Wave 10. So let's get Webstor cracked open and take a closer look at the figure. Now that New Eternia Webstor is out of the box, we can take a look at this figure in all his glory, and I do have to say they did a fantastic job, and this figure is glorious. So let's start like we usually do and take a look at him from top to bottom, starting with his head sculpt. And the way that they designed the head sculpt is fantastic. We can zoom in on some of the details here. It has some really nice ridging that is going across the skull. The ears are fantastic in a nice pointed way. The jaw is actually really interesting because they make it look like he has an articulated jaw, but it's not. It's actually an open mouth that you can see here. The eyes were done fantastic, and they do tie into the extra set of eyes as he is an arachnid. And they really look like they are light piped, and maybe something that they could have done design wise is just make a small slit in his head to let in some of that light, because he looks really creepy with his eyes as they glow red. But love the fangs, love the head sculpt overall. And taking a look at the back of the figure, you can see the legs that are attached to the back here, and they did something very different in this New Eternia version, and I was alluding to this earlier. They do not have the grappling hook in the backpack, so it is just legs, and they look great. They're in a nice purple. It looks like more of a metallic purple than a matte purple, and it goes very nicely with the chest armor. And speaking of the chest armor, the design that they have for the armor in the middle is great. It looks more like paying homage to the Black Widow spider with kind of an hourglass shape to it in the top here. And if you catch the light in a certain way, it also makes it look like this is more of a translucent design, but it's really not. The way that they designed the reds and the materials that they used are really stellar. If you take a closer look at the armor, you can see it's very layered and it's very textured for MOTU chest armor. So I love that they put in the texture here, and it wasn't just a flat texture for the armor. And that treatment goes all the way around into his entire armor. And you can see from the back too that it continues around, and it does not continue onto the legs, but I think that's a great design choice because they are different pieces that go on to this armor. All right, and taking a look at some of the more boring aspects of the figures, the arms. So the arms are symmetrical. They are the same on both sides, and it uses more of that standard Masters of the Universe Origins buck arms, and goes without saying, the loincloth is a reuse as well, but I do love the wash that they put on here. So it's more of like a green wash that makes it, it stands out for the loincloth. So you can kind of see it going around on his booty as well. And really the differences here that we can see on the legs is this really nice shin armor that ties in the purple with the shin armor to the purple with the rest of the figure. So I think they have done a fantastic job just designing this figure overall. All right, so let's take a look at Webstor's accessories that he comes with. All right, and taking a closer look at Webstor's accessories, he does come with an extra pair of hands, which are different, which actually look really good, his grappling hook, and also his grappling gun. So let's take a first look at his grappling gun. And on first look, this looks like a t-shirt shooter, just in how it's designed, and this piece does actually come off, and it's a handle that Webstor can grasp. But it's just interesting design choices that they have here for this weapon, because it looks a lot different than Webstor's normal gun that he totes. Similar orange color, but you have to make way for the grappling hook design, which is very interesting here. So what we can do is take a look to see how these pieces go together. So on the end of the grappling hook, you can attach it to the gun here, which makes a really interesting modification to this weapon. The grappling hook is articulated, and so you can open or close them how you like, and you can also fit the front end of the hook inside the shooter. So here's how it looks all together when this is all pieced together, and just provides a lot more displayability, posability, and just a lot of action if you're into playing with your toys and not just having them sit on the shelf. And let's take a look at his hands. And I usually skip this part, but I really like the way that they did Webstor's hands. It's more of a grasping hand than anything else. And we do have the normal fist that comes with a lot of the Masters of the Universe figures. And here we have Webstor all geared up, and you can see how his gun fits into his hand, and also the differences that you can display with just some of the articulation in the grappling hook if you prefer it open or if you prefer it closed. I also swapped out the hand for his grasping hand, and it just makes the figure look so much cooler. And with those creepy little legs going over his shoulder, this figure is bound to stand out on your shelf. And a very cool feature that they added to this figure, you can actually remove the leg parts of the backpack to expose the inner workings of the backpack, which is actually really cool because you can actually make the Webstor look like the normal version of Webstor that you're used to seeing. So for example, you can plug the end of the grappling hook in back, and it has a little slot that you can raise the grappling hook, and it plugs right into that slot right there. And you can put the backpack on like you would normally. If I could find the right end. Yes. All right. So the backpack just snaps together, and you can have your Webstor look like the Classics version, which is very, very cool. All right, and if we want to strip Webstor down to his bare essentials without his weapon, we can actually see how the legs articulate. So they don't have a huge range of motion here, so you can kind of bring them back about this far off the shoulder, and you can pivot them in more of a side-to-side manner here. So I think it gives some really cool options where you can, basically it's like Burger King, have it your way, baby. You can display the legs however you want, but within reason, because they do not have a large range of motion. All right, it's comparison time, and I do have the MOTU Classics Webstor to compare with the new Eternia Webstor from the Masterverse line. So maybe let's start with taking a look at just the differences in the head sculpts here before we move on to anything else. All right, and zooming in on the head sculpts, you can really see some of the differences here. In the general shape of the head sculpt is pretty much the same. The ears are a little bit different. The new Eternia version is a little bit more pointier than the ears on the Classics version, and the facial expressions are much different. In the new Eternia version, Webstor has an open mouth, which I think gives a really, really cool look, and the MOTU Classics version does have a closed mouth, but you can see all of the teeth kind of poking through the front of the face. The Classics version does have a little bit more eye detail with an extra set of eyes on the top of the head sculpt, which is fine. I actually wish that they would have incorporated that particular aspect into the new Eternia version, because this is an arachnid, he's an insect, he does have multiple eyes. So I would really love to have seen that in this particular version. Now, some of the differences lie with the paint apps on the figure, and more notably the armor, which you can see here. The armor really blends into the MOTU Classics blue, as they kind of use a very blue-black color on the MOTU Classics version, and the armor that's designed for the new Eternia version really stands out. It really looks different, and I really love the way that this piece came together. Now, looking at some of the differences in the guns and the grappling mechanisms, we can turn the Classics version around and you can see that his grappling hook is integrated into his backpack, and the new Eternia version, the grappling hook is integrated into the gun. And of course, the MOTU Classics versions are a lot more premium, so we do get a nice set of paint apps on the MOTU Classics gun, and the gun that came with the new Eternia Webstor actually looks more like a kid's toy than anything else now that I'm comparing the two. But I still love the way it looks, and I think it's cool that they really changed the form and function of this grappling hook. Now, moving down to the legs, I really like the way that the new Eternia Webstor's shin armor stands out, as the one in the Classics version really blends in to the skin tones here. So really great job with this new Eternia version of Webstor. Mattel, love this figure, and I think it is the standout of the wave. And that does it for our review of the Masterverse new Eternia Webstor. And as always, let us know what you think about this figure in the comments below. And thanks for tuning into Toy Habits.